It's way too long. You always thought that you were weak, but babe, you're wrong. Yeah, you better step into the light, just give it a try. Think that it's time you let that spark out. You've been hiding in the shadows way too long. And who cares if you might mess it up? You're stronger than the others think. And who cares if you might mess it up? Go ahead and shine, darling. Go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine. You shouldn't doubt yourself, 'cause you're a work of art. You should know that you are perfect with those flaws. Yeah, you better step into the light, just give it a try. Know that it's time you let that spark out. You've been hiding in the shadows way too long. And who cares if you might mess it up? You're stronger than the others think. And who cares if you might mess it up? Go ahead and shine, darling. Go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine, shine, darling. Go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine. You're stronger than the others think. And who cares if you might mess it up? Shine. Go ahead and shine, darling. Go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine, shine, darling. Go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. We're trying to connect our Facebook Live, and I'm all over the place now. I'm trying to get the group in here, and obviously it's not working. So I apologize. Join us over on the Facebook group. But thank you for coming to A Turn of Events, where we help put a positive spin on the future of your business. I'm Annette Naif, the CEO and creative director of Naif Productions. We are a wedding and event production company. And I'm just so happy that you're here. If you are a wedding or event planner and looking to, start your own business, get into the business, you're having trouble with your business now, join us over at our Facebook group, Event Planner Society. And there's lots of great people in there, and we can help you with your business. Okay, so my next guest is Nolan Bradbury. And we're going to talk about how accounting can improve your profitability. And if you're just starting your business, it is really important to know your numbers, know about your profitability. I know it's scary. I hate looking at that stuff, but I know when I first started my business, I didn't look at it. And then eventually when I did, it really, really made a difference when you pay attention to your numbers. So we're going to talk about all that good stuff. So Nolan is the founder of Bradfield Accounting and Advisory and a seasoned financial professional who is passionate about helping business owners achieve their dreams. Nolan leans on 2 decades of experience in both the public and private sectors to provide insightful, relevant, and most importantly, digestible financial guidance. He works to help entrepreneurs minimize the unknown and remove operational uncertainty from the equation so they can concentrate on what they do best, lose less sleep, and increase profitability and cash flow. Cash flow is always important. Hello, Nolan. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, so happy to have you. So let's get started. Can you tell us, share with the audience a bit about your background and journey that led you to become a seasonal professional in accounting and financial strategies?
Yeah, so I went to college actually not to be an accountant. I went to be a psychologist because that was what interested me most. And somewhere along the line, the siren's call of accounting got its grasp in me, and I went down that path. I think the thing that appeals to me about accounting, to be truthful, is it is kind of the cornerstone of all business, meaning that it is oftentimes the way we learn to interpret and read the tea leaves, if you will.
Yes.
And so to me, it was a very sort of like impactful way to understand business at a very broad level and so forth. So I went out, I got my degree, I got a master's in accounting, as cool as that sounds, I know. And then went into public accounting for a little while, worked on very large companies out here in the Northwest where I'm based. And then went into private, helped a company go public. And then ultimately for like the last 12, 13 years, I've been working with small business owners to really provide them what I feel is a lacking skill set in that space, and meaning that there's just not a lot of resources for when you're starting out that you can go lean on that are going to help you in the way you need to sort of grow your business. So
Right.
that's where we've gotten to at this point.
Okay, great. Awesome. So many business owners, including wedding planners, may shy away from dealing with the financial aspects of their business, which I mentioned when I first started.
Yep.
We hate looking at the numbers. It's scary because you're not making a lot of money when you first start out.
Yep.
How can they overcome the fear of numbers and embrace the data to their advantage?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that is like centered around not just people who are starting out, but really any business owner.
Yes.
There's studies over the years that show that the thing business owners hate the most or dislike the most about their running a business is the accounting and finance. And so I think what's important to understand is, and this isn't just about accounting, but anything that we don't like, we tend to avoid, right?
Yes.
Because there's this feeling, it makes us uncomfortable. Maybe there's shame associated with it. There's a lot of feelings around it. Even more so when you start talking about money and so forth. And so the first thing I would say is just know that you're not alone if you feel that way. And I think there's oftentimes a lot of power in knowing that you're not the only one that feels a certain way.
Right.
Every person who has started out in a business or running a business has at some point felt what you're feeling.
Right.
And so it's not unusual in that sense. The second thing I would say is, because you know you're going to avoid it because it's something you don't like, that often means then that we are perhaps neglecting or not prioritizing a very important aspect of understanding how to run a business. Because like I said up front, at the end of the day, accounting oftentimes serves as the Rosetta Stone, if you will, of understanding what's going on. And so oftentimes accounting is looking at this, but I would say it also uses the cornerstone of being able to look forward and understand what may be happening in the future. And so when you're starting out, like, what are the things you need to be aware of? One, being aware of that tendency so that you can try to avoid it. But then two, finding someone who can partner with you, who is an expert in that field, to help sort of make sense of something that is maybe not your expertise, right?
Yes, for sure. Okay, so which accounting report would be the most important for any business owner to be able to fully understand, to get an idea of the profitability of their business and business health?
Yeah. So I guess to start off, let's kind of level set what options are available, right? So traditionally speaking, if you're a small business, there's probably 2-3 reports that you're probably going to get from most accountants or software. One is going to be the balance sheet. One is going to be the profit and loss, and one is going to be the statement of cash flows. So as you might interpret from the name, profit and loss is probably going to be the one that tells you the most about, your profitability.
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
I'm always looking at it now.
but I'm actually going to come back to that last because I want to explain what the other ones do in relation to that, because I think it helps inform the usability of that statement. So the thing to understand about the balance sheet, which is often the most neglected of the three, is that it is a life to date understanding of the business, meaning that at any point in time, it is telling you everything that has happened in the business. Now, that's kind of weird to think about. And so to understand changes in it, you have to compare it to other periods. But it basically tells you everything that has happened. And it actually also tells you how much money you've made over the life of the business as well. The statement of cash flows is kind of what it sounds like. It is a breakdown of how your money is basically being made and being spent. So as it comes in, where are you using it to fund your business or buy things? So that brings us then to the statement, or the profit and loss statement, which by and large is about classifying the way you spend money. So at the top of it, we often have revenue, and we see sometimes you're categorizing how you earn that revenue, what are the different types of it that you earn. And then a lot of times people have what's called cost of goods sold. And that is sort of the, I'll say, direct expenses that come into play for your business. And then we get into the more generalized expenses. And at the bottom of that, you get a profit and loss. So for a lot of people, that is the thing they look at the most that helps them understand, well, at the end of the day, how much did I make? Now, I do want to caveat this because this is something that I often hear from business owners, which is they'll say, well, I made $20,000 or $5,000 or $100,000 last month. Why don't I have that in my bank account? And this is the important distinction, is that you can spend money that does not flow through and be reflected on your profit and loss statement. Okay. And that's the big distinction. So that's why sometimes it is hard to only look at the profit and loss and get a good sense of what you're looking at. In an ideal state, you're kind of looking at all three of them, or in an even better scenario, you have, say, 3 to 5 metrics or numbers that reflect the overall health of the business, that are kind of like acting as canary in the coal mine to give you a sense of like when things might be getting off track or not.
Yeah, it's a lot. I have all my stuff on QuickBooks, which is great. It's great and it's not so great, but I have used QuickBooks online for a very long time, and it's great. You put your bank, you just attach your bank account to it, your business bank account. You should have your business and your personal separated.
100%.
That you're making sure, and then you can pay yourself from your business. You can have a payroll company, but if you're starting out, you can pay yourself from your business. And I just transfer. I still do it the old school. I transfer money into my personal account, and that's kind of paying myself. But I have with your QuickBooks, and there's other systems out there, and it downloads all of your transactions that you've done in your business, whatever you've bought for your business or paid for, and all of your expenses out there. And it puts it right in the system, and you really don't have to do much. You just have to make sure that it's categorized correctly. So each line item needs to be categorized. And to set that up, you should get a bookkeeper or somebody to help you set that up. Because I wouldn't have known any of that. So I don't know. I know like professional development. Now I know the categories, but to set them up, I probably should make a list for my students so they know what to put in there. But it's very simple. It's very easy, and it's so great. I mean, the P&L is like my lifeline, right? I just kind of look at that, and then you have to make sure that everything's categorized. It's great at the end of the year when you're doing your taxes because it's all done for you. So I find that to be really amazing. And then cost of goods. So I just want to talk about that for a second. So if I'm paying, and just for my students out there who are listening and people who are, so when I'm paying, sometimes I have to pay something like the client will, I'm paying something for the client, but the client's going to reimburse me. So I will put that under cost of goods so that it's not in something that I would have it wouldn't go towards my income or expense on that. So I do put it in that. So just a little tip on that. All right. So business owners often face challenges in understanding financial reports, obviously. How can they decipher these reports to make informed decisions about their business?
Yeah, so great question. I think one of the things you said earlier, I think is a key part of this, which is it's very important that when you're starting out, it's probably regardless of sort of what your available cash flow is to invest in the business, I would say investing up front to get things set up correctly is a very important part of that investment, meaning that it is more costly to try to fix things down the road after they've happened than try to make sure you've done it correct the first time, right? That's an old adage that it always costs more to fix something than it does usually to do it right the first time.
So true. Yes.
So I would say part of understanding what you're looking at is making sure that it has been set up correctly, right? Otherwise, you end up in this scenario where you kind of get garbage in, garbage out, right? Which is that if it's not set up in a meaningful way, then you're not going to be able to interpret it in a meaningful way.
Right.
So I think that's a really key element of this. In terms of how to interpret it, this is where I think to some extent, again, having someone, if your familiarity or acumen with finance and accounting is not as strong as maybe you'd like it to be, or you're aware that maybe that's not your area of expertise, it can be very helpful to partner with someone who can help you interpret it. To me, oftentimes, there's different aspects that accountants and bookkeepers can provide. One of them is simply sort of the outsourcing of recording, like you just described. But then there's also components, which is more of an advisory role, which is like really helping you interpret the data and learn what that means. And I think that's a key element of this. It's hard to learn something you don't know on your own, right? And so how do you do that? Well, I think it's important that you understand what the relationships are, meaning like, what is revenue really representing? Like you just described, what do cost of goods sold represent versus what other expenses are? How do you interpret your business is another key component of this. There's a lot of flexibility in the way you record things, believe it or not. It's more a matter of like, does it ultimately help you understand what has happened? And I think that's the piece that sometimes gets lost in all of this, which is we're told that it has to be a certain way, but that doesn't fit into the way we learn or interpret data. And as a result, it isn't meaningful or useful. And then what happens is it doesn't get used, right? So it becomes this thing that you have and you're paying for, but doesn't actually provide any value for you at the end of the day.
Right.
So some of it is about understanding what is it that you need these financial statements to provide for you. Is it you need them at the end of the year for tax purposes? Or are you at a stage where you're using them to make decisions about hiring people or investing in certain endeavors or marketing campaigns? How you interpret it, how you design that is based upon what you're trying to produce. Because knowing if you just need it for tax purposes at the end of the year, quite honestly, like you can very simply do that, and there isn't a lot more you need. If you're trying to use it to actually make strategic, data-driven decisions, there's a lot more that comes into play for that. And truthfully, that is probably an area where you would want to have someone help you or educate you as you go through that process.
Yeah. And that's a really key point. You really should be educated in it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know everything about accounting,
Absolutely.
and that's with anything in your business, right? So I always try to make sure I pay attention to how did they set up the ads. I probably can't go back and do it again, but I have a light understanding of what it should look like for the ads. Same with my finances and stuff. So I have a bookkeeper. I now have a bookkeeper, but when I started, I did not for many, many years, and people, sometimes don't. But I hired someone to help me set it up. And then she kind of gave me a little tutorial on it. I'm like, okay, this is what you got to do when you categorize everything. But you have to reconcile it every month as well. I don't do that. I have someone else do it. But now I have a bookkeeper who manages all of it.
Sure.
But I still want to understand, sometimes I'm just like, okay, fix this. I don't know why this keeps coming back in the account. But fix it. And then I don't really care about that stuff. But you really should understand, the basics of what you're doing and understanding how to read your P&Ls. It's not hard. I mean, it's really not hard to read. But also a really good thing is I always take a look at the end of the year and I say, okay, where did I spend a lot of money? Where could I cut back? Did I, have too much staff, or did I not have enough, or did I do, too much spending over here, or wherever it is, right? So I use it for that to kind of reassess what am I spending money on at the end of the year, and how can I cut back on things? Because I still believe, like when I started, it's all about, you don't need to spend a lot of money. And unfortunately there were areas that I did, and I didn't need to. But I teach that, don't spend a lot of money on certain areas, because things like your website, it changes 50 times throughout your business, owning your business. So it does change. So it's just good to understand what you're doing, or, the basics of what you need to know. And so that's my piece on that. Okay. So based on your experience, what are some common financial mistakes that business owners, particularly wedding planners, should be mindful of, wedding and event planners should be mindful of and avoid?
Yeah, great question. So, I think at a high level, and this is true for wedding planners or really any business owner, especially when you're starting out, is understanding uh, where you are kind of in the life cycle from moving from a DIY to a done with you to a done for you progression, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that's important is when we start out, we are very much in a DIY mindset, right? Everything is, and it's largely driven by budget, and we're figuring it out on our own. It's hard to delegate something that you don't understand yourself, right? Like, how do you hand off something when they're going to ask you, well, how do you do it? And you go, I don't know. And so part of it is, though, it's important to understand what are the things that are only you can do that grow your business. Meaning, like, there are certain things that probably are not able to be delegated. And then there are a lot of things that we think I can't delegate, but really can be delegated. And it's important in that piece to differentiate those, like be honest with yourself and differentiate those, because to really grow a business and to really get the financial results you want, you have only a finite amount of time and you have to be using it to its fullest potential. And so there are areas, accounting can be one of those, marketing can be one of those, legal can be one of those. So a whole host of areas where you may think like, oh, I have to do this for cost reasons, but you need to evaluate what am I giving up or not able to achieve by not relinquishing this sort of component to someone else.
Right.
Right. So that's, I think, a key piece of this. I think the other piece of this is really understanding all of the costs associated to you providing the service you're providing, right? So what tends to happen a lot is we don't fully understand the relationship between all the costs and what the revenue is that we charge for that particular service. And so as a result, we end up pricing it in an inefficient way.
Right.
Either too much and then we're not competitive in the market, or too little and we're wondering, like, I'm working like 100 hours a week and yet I have nothing to show for it. Why is that, right? And a lot of it is because we don't know how much things truly cost. We think we do. We sort of have this intuition, oh, it's X amount. But I'll tell you from experience, most business owners are wildly off as to how much they think they're spending on things.
Yeah.
And as a result, that significantly influences not just what they're charging, but then their profitability, right? Because profitability is just your revenue minus your expenses. And so if you think you're spending $50 to service someone, but you're actually spending $75 and you charge $100, well, that just costs you $25 on every time you sell it, right?
Yeah.
And that is, you compound that over a month, over a year, and that can have substantial impact to your peace of mind, your well-being, your financial profitability, all those things. I do really think that in the early stages, that is probably the most important thing for a business owner to really understand.
Yeah, it is. And it's also as you start to grow, because I, had a big growth last year. And I, because I have a coaching program, so I have a whole team for that. And then I have my event business, and it's a lot. And then I have my marketing team. So there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I literally could not even remember the names of the people on my team. And so I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I need to take a look at who's on the team, because I hired fast, and I have a great team. I'm very lucky. You get good at that as you get older and you're getting into this business. But I couldn't even remember who was doing. I knew what people were doing, but I couldn't even remember their names. So that's not good, right? So I really took a look at the end of the year and said, okay, how much am I spending money on these? Can someone that's already on my team handle some of these tasks? It's a lot. It's overwhelming when you start to grow as well. It feels like it's just a roller coaster. You know how it is. It's always like that in your businesses. Every level of it is a learning, process.
And I think the thing that's important too, because that's 100% accurate. And I think that there's another element to that sometimes can hinder business owners in terms of their progression, which is, we're as business owners, right? We are constantly making decisions that we're making for the benefit of the business, right? What is in the best interest of the business in terms of achieving these goals?
Right.
But the reality is that most of the decisions we make are not going to yield the results we want, at least right away. Some of them are wrong. Some of them are the right first step, but they're not the final step. And it's important that when you evaluate the decisions you make, that you give yourself a little bit of grace in reviewing that, right? Do not penalize yourself because you think, oh, this was a waste of money. Like, I made a bad choice. Like, well, perhaps, but you're also not valuing the gains that you got from that learning experience and what it did teach you and where it ultimately put you on. And so this goes back to that idea of like, why do people not like accounting? It's because it usually leaves this bad taste in their mouth, because it oftentimes is revealing a lot of the areas that they maybe didn't do as well in, and that's how they see it. But the reality is that's not how it has to be. Instead, it's a learning opportunity for you to see, well, where can I improve? Where are the things that I can do differently to make it better? And so that isn't it's like an adjacent thing. It's a mindset thing, but it is accounting related, which is don't fear what the numbers are going to tell you, because what they're going to tell you is in fact usually the truth, and knowing what the actual truth is will allow you to make better decisions and have better results in the future.
That's such great advice. Such great advice. When I'm a big fan of having a coach. And so I have a coaching program, and it breaks my heart when people say, oh, I can't afford it. Right. It's not, I have a coaching program that's small. I have like a 397. That's nothing getting started. So, but it's every time I've hired a coach, it may not have been exactly what I thought I was going to get, but
Yeah.
I received so many other great things from it. So I've always looked at that. It may not have been, 100% of what I thought, but the people that I connected with, all the other things that I learned, things like that. So you have to kind of look at it that way. So I'm a big, listen, coaching is everything. You can't do it all by yourself, and you need to have some support there. So and the money that I have spent has definitely helped me in saving money down the right, not making costly mistakes that I would have made if I didn't have someone helping me along the way. So you mentioned earlier, and that's just really important.
And sorry, if you don't mind me adding on to that, just so like, I'm going to butcher this, but there's a Michael J. Fox quote that I have like kind of up my office, and it basically refers to the idea that your happiness is the relationship between what your expectations are and what actually happens. And so I say that and you're like, well, why does that matter in the context of accounting? Well, accounting is literally the comparison of what you thought was going to happen to what actually happened. And oftentimes we don't like it because we see it as this thing that is going to tell us where we failed. In actuality, it's an opportunity for us to look at things and go, where can I improve? And how can I be okay with the decisions I made, and what can I take away from them? So I just want to add that in there, because it is such an important component of financial growth, is like the humility that comes with knowing that it isn't a bad choice. It just happens to be the choice you made. And now you have an opportunity to make another choice.
Right. And I'm building my coaching program, and it's a whole nother event. I mean, it's a whole nother business. It's a side of my business, totally different from doing events. My events are, I've been 14 years with my business now. So it's kind of got a rhythm, and it's, people come to me. So it's not as hard as when I was first starting, but I'm starting from scratch with the coaching program, and it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. I have to, there's so many things that I have to do, and so much money that I'm spending, but you just can't give up, just like always, right? You just got to keep going and be consistent and not give up, which is what I tell everyone. But there are times when I'm like, why am I doing this? It's crazy, but I love to teach, so I'm doing it. But I'm going to find that, you're going to find that sweet spot. It just takes some time to do that. So you just can't give up on that. So, all right. So let's talk about cash flow. It's critical for small businesses. What strategies do you recommend for managing cash flow effectively?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to starting out, there's two mindsets that I think are important to understand, and the difference between them. So there's a mindset of debt is evil in simplistic terms, right? Which is, and I'm not shaming. There's nothing wrong with it that if that's your viewpoint, right? Like there are people who are very debt adverse.
Yes.
But I would also add that there is a place in the growth of a business for debt in some capacity, whether you view that as credit cards or lines of credit or a business loan. It can oftentimes be a very cost-effective way to scale a business, because the only other way to do it is to like basically take outside money that funds allows you to grow it on your own, or organically, which can be even harder sometimes, right? Because you're only able to grow to the extent you can sell more, and there's a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario there.
Right.
So when it comes to understanding cash flow, part of it is understanding what is your risk tolerance and what is your appetite for using the cash that you have, but other avenues for cash to scale the business to get it to a point, because you oftentimes have to invest the capital, both money and time, and the reward comes down the road. It isn't like you flip the switch. Like, anyone knows who spent money on any sort of ads, right? You think, oh, I'm going to spend this money and it's going to generate money the next day. That is not how it works, right? You spend the money, and oftentimes it's months down the road that you see the return on that investment.
Right.
And so oftentimes small businesses don't have the flexibility on its own merits to float that kind of money, right? You make the investment to come down the road. So that's where I would encourage people to be perhaps a bit more open to the idea of a small line of credit, getting a credit card or two, just so that you can grow and scale when opportunities come along.
Right.
There is a formula that we have in my family, and as an accountant, everything's a formula, I suppose. But my kids will tell you this, that what I tell them is success is opportunity plus preparedness. And so for me, the reason that's important is that you aren't always guaranteed when the opportunity is going to come along, but you have to be prepared for it. And so part of being prepared is, do I have the funds? Do I have the resources to take advantage of this thing when it comes across my plate? So maybe there's a really large event that you're going to be able to get. Are you able to spend the money to take care of that event when it comes? Because that could be life-changing. It could be the thing that catapults you and doubles your profits for a year, depending upon its size, right? And so that's a really key component of it. Now, pulling out of the weeds, understanding cash flow. I'm going to refer back to something I said earlier in this when we were talking, which is understanding that what your P&L shows as profit is not what's going to be in your bank account. Okay. And the reason we have to understand that is because you may be paying off things like a line of credit or a loan. And the only piece of that payment, if you have a home payment or something like that, this is that it's a component of interest and paying down the balance, right? Well, only the interest is going to show in your P&L. So let's say you spend $2,000 in a month, and $500 of that is interest, $1,500 of that goes to the loan. Well, you're going to show profit that's actually $1,500 higher than what your balance would necessarily show in your bank account, right? And so part of it is understanding the things that influence your P&L, such that you don't become married to only seeing the profit and going, oh, well, I made $15,000 last month, but you only have, say, 10 in your account. And that can get people in trouble because they can sometimes only view it through the optics of like the profit number.
Right. Very good. So I want to go back to what you said about you may be spending some money, but it doesn't show up. The profits from it don't show up till later. So I did some SEO on my website, and I heard about you got to SEO, you got it for years before I did it. And it works. And I'm like, and so finally one year I was making a little extra money. This was years down the road. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I found a great deal. For whatever reason, you get so many advertisements. I thought this looks fine. I'm going to go with it. It was in New York. So I was like, okay. So I paid $100 a month for 12 months, and they did the SEO. It took probably, and then I just didn't do it again because I don't know. I did it. Yeah. And I would say, I probably want to say 2 years, maybe it was a year and a half or so. And I started getting people inquiring through my website for nonprofits because I was very highly ranked on nonprofits. It's harder in corporate events and things like that. Okay. And I have literally made hundreds of thousands of dollars from that SEO that I did, and spent, I don't know, $1,200, right? $1,500. I had to pay a little bit upfront, and it took a little bit of time. And now I pretty much kind of do it now every year. Like they're with me all the time now. So it's a company I'm still with. I still work with them. They work with me on great things. They're redoing my website. I'm doing a wedding website. I got all kinds of things going, but I have to say it did take a little bit of time, but that investment made me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like I can't even, every year I still get maybe 6, 7 or 8 or so nonprofits just from the SEO from my website. So, you always want to ask, how did you find me? And that's how you're going to know. So it's definitely worked over the years. So sometimes what you're spending money on does take some time to see the profits from it. So you have to, running a business, you have to be patient. That's for sure. And events as well. But like you have to have patience when you're running a business. It's crazy. Yeah. So in the age of technology, how can accounting software be leveraged to streamline the financial processes and gain insights?
Yeah, so you kind of teased this at the top of the hour, I think, with QuickBooks Online. So as a little bit of background, not to bore people with old technology, but for a long, it wasn't until I would say in the last like 5 to 6 years, maybe 7, 8 years, that accounting software kind of caught up with the rest of the world, meaning that for the longest time, everything was a application that was physically housed on a computer or a server.
Right.
I know, shocking that accounting not on the forefront of technological advances. That's probably not surprising anyone out there. But that actually has been a huge development in the way that, in terms of helping businesses, particularly small businesses. One, it made it much more cost effective when it moved to more of a cloud-based system. But two, it also allows you to integrate third-party software or other applications into the accounting software and reduce sort of a lot of the manual, more maybe complex entries that would have to be made outside of that. So a good example is maybe you use Stripe to collect payments. And so Stripe's a payment processor.
Yes.
There are softwares, many different applications that will connect directly from Stripe into, say, QuickBooks Online, that would then reduce your need to have to actually manually enter that information, right? Not only does that save time, but it also increases the likelihood that it's done correctly. And so things like that have really helped, I think, small businesses. So outside of like these obvious things like that, what I would say is, where you see things that you're spending a lot of time on, whether it's yourself or maybe your accountant, that's a good place to ask yourself, like, there's probably, if I'm having this problem, someone else probably had this problem, and there's probably also someone who developed a solution for it. Yeah. And you'd be amazed if you go out there and look at like the things that are available that sort of integrate into the finance accounting realm of technology that really does simplify a lot of this. Particularly when you're early on, and even later on in terms of like speeding up the rate at which information is made available, right? So historically speaking, it can take a very long time for results to be kind of come final and then be presented to you as a business owner. But now so much can be done in real time, like you said, with the syncing of your transactions into QuickBooks Online, that this can happen, instantaneously. You can click a button, and within a minute or two, everything that you spent for the last however long is pulled in, and you can do it so much faster than you used to. So things like that have expedited the speed at which information is available, which in turn makes it more useful to business owners, right? You're not waiting a month to find out how you did last month. Maybe you're waiting a week, and that can be monumental in terms of the next decision that you have to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I always use I don't have credit cards. I did in the beginning, but I don't now. I pay cash for everything because I'm able to do that. But I do have a debit card, which feels like a credit card, right? So it's, in my mind, I probably feel like I'm using a credit card. But I use the business card basically for everything, but I use that business card and it's automatically in the account on the statement and automatically does it. So if I'm paying cash for things like actual cash, which nowadays people don't even take cash anymore, it's crazy. But it's like, we don't take cash. I'm like, oh yeah. But if I'm paying cash, I'll forget. So I use my debit card all the time to pay for things so that it is recorded. So it goes into my statement and I don't have to think about it. I used to keep receipts like crazy all the time, right? What was that system I used? Oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it now. I used to download all of my receipts to it, and I can't remember. I just canceled the membership for it, and I used it for many, many years. And I was like, gosh, I haven't used this in years. So it's really a great way to track all your expenses and things.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize something you said there, which is, if you're starting out, please open up a business bank account.
You have
please do not use your own bank account or credit card to do that. And it isn't just because as an accountant, it makes it harder for us to do what you need us to do. It's also from a legality standpoint.
Right.
You are blending your personal money and the business's money, which can, not always, but can expose you personally to liability that you may incur as a business. If someone tries to sue you and you're using your personal money and the business money sort of interchangeably, courts may decide that there's really no protection for you as an individual, and thus they can go after not just your business assets, but your personal assets. I don't say that to scare you, more of just, it's a very important first step to have in that process.
And in order to open up your business at the bank, you have to have an entity, a business entity, like an LLC, which is protects you
Yep.
from any personal lawsuits and things like that. So you open that up and then you get your federal ID number. Once
Yep.
you get those, you take it to the bank and they will open a bank account. It's very simple. It doesn't take long. And they will ask you when you're there, do you want a business credit card as well? And they just open it up and do it all at the same time. Just be careful with the credit cards. I'm such a scaredy cat when it comes to them because debt is hard to get. We talked a little bit about it, but try not to overdo it and pay it off as quickly as you can and not use it as much. Just be smart about it. But yes, you must separate your monies. I have a very bad story about it when I first started, and I don't want to get into that right now. I can share it because I share everything, but it's not good. So learn from, mistakes that somebody else has made. So it's easy to do. So it's easy.
Yes.
Once you get in the rhythm of it, it's very simple to do.
Yep.
So, so that's great. Okay. Did you have anything else you want to share in that, or you're good?
No, I just want to emphasize that point of yours.
Okay, great. Okay. So what elements should business owners regularly assess to conduct a financial health check for their businesses?
So there's a couple things I'll call out. Some of them are a little bit easier than others, but I would say a really important thing, especially in this day and age where everything is moved to a subscription model, or like the Netflix model as it's often sometimes referred to, which is it's very easy to sign up for something and not realize you're still paying for it, both on the personal and business side of things. So I would say I would encourage you to regularly review your transactions and really know what it is you're spending it on. And then from that, decide, do I still need this, or can I take a break from it? And then, you can always add it back. Like rarely is someone going to say like, no, I don't want you to come back to me as a client again,
exactly.
right? Like they're happily going to take your money again if you come back in a couple months. So I think that's a really important step in this, is like review your expenses, not just from the standpoint of where you spent money, but like, are there any things that you are still paying for that you don't realize you have?
Yeah.
Some cases, maybe you're paying for something twice and you don't realize it, right? Like really remove some of the unnecessaries, because even like a $20 charge, that's $240 over the course of a year. That can add up over years and years of like not paying attention to things like that.
Yeah.
I think, in terms of other things that are going to help you from a profitability cash flow standpoint, I would say as you're reviewing the information, think about what that means for future spend. So in essence, what does the budget look like for yourself? And so I think budgets sometimes can feel very daunting to people because there's this, I think, underlying need for it to be very precise and accurate. And what I would tell you is you need to let go of that fear. That is not what a budget is meant to do. A budget is really just meant to be sort of the guardrails of the highway, such that if you get really off track, you're gonna realize it, right? So it's okay if you allotted $1,000 for office expenses and you spent $1,200. That's okay. You didn't mess up there, right? It's more about knowing, okay, I went over. Is that reasonable? Why did I go over? It's really more meant to be kind of flags that call your attention to things so that you can better understand what your decision making was in that process. Like you may look back and go, oh yeah, that's because I bought a new printer and that was like a fourth of the budget and I didn't plan for that when I started the year out, right? And then the other part of that budget is it doesn't need to be super formal. You can sort of back of the napkin it, but also keep in mind that like if your business undergoes a significant change, that is a good opportunity to refresh the budget, right? It doesn't have to be a once a year thing or once every 5 years. Hopefully you're doing it more frequently than that. But looking at it, say like you start in the beginning of the year and you're like, this is what my business is going to look like. This is what I think it's going to be at the end of the year. And then say around May, you take on an entirely new endeavor that starts producing a lot more revenue for you, but also has additional expenses that you didn't plan for.
Right.
That's actually a good pause point for you to go, okay, that's great. I knew what I did then. I know something different now. Let me revisit what I planned for at that point so that when I get to the end of the year, I'm not comparing apples to oranges. Like I actually have something to reference back to that is reflective of like what was happening during the year. So I think that's the other key point. There's a lot of other things, but they become a lot more granular and I don't want to get too into the weeds on it. I think sort of like that level of stuff will help people focus on the right things. Yeah,
for sure. I think, when I pay my quarterly taxes, which you should be paying your quarterly taxes because that will be dangerous as well as if you don't, and your accountant can help you with that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a lot, right? It's not a lot, but it's just something you should do. And you have peace of mind at the end of the year. So, but I also then take a look at, especially apps, right? We have so many apps. There's so
Yep.
many things to get. And all of a sudden I get the end of the year, I look at what apps I have and I
Mhm.
get rid of some of them. I have
Yep.
so many. I'm paying $5 here, $20 here, $12 here. I mean, they add up, right? You
They
could
really
be
do.
spending a couple $100 a month on these things that I'm not even using. I thought, oh, that would be a cute little font to use. And so, I mean, then I never used it, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So you want to take a look at that. But I usually every quarter will take a look at the things that are in my P&L so that
Yeah.
I can say, okay, because at the end of the year, I might forget what I was spending things on and what was this for. So I try to look at it every quarter and just kind of glance over, make sure nothing looks out of the ordinary or anything like that.
Yeah.
So such great stuff. Thank you so much. I just
Absolutely.
want to ask one final question, or not, there's a couple things I want to do a lightning round with you, but I just have a
Okay.
question about when someone's ready to hire somebody to help them in their accounting, what should they consider in picking the right person or firm?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I get a fair amount, because I think inherently tied to that, right, is the acknowledgement that you're not an expert in this thing, yet you're having to hire an expert, and that's a very sort of like uneasy place to be, right? Because you don't really know how to evaluate someone.
Right.
It's hard, but I would say there's three things I sort of try to call out for people when they're going through this process. So the first is go out to your state's or wherever the bookkeeper is that you're going to hire, accountant. Go out to that state's board of accountancy. There's a website. You can just Google New York Board of Accountancy, Washington Board of Accountancy, and see if there's any claims made against the firm. Like, that's a very easy thing to do, and just make sure that they don't have like a record of people being upset with them. I know it sounds odd, but it's like, it actually can be very helpful. Like, some people can skate by without you realizing that there's issues with them.
Right.
The second thing I would recommend is do not hire a family member.
Yes,
It's like, I can hear you all the time. I hear, oh, my uncle's a bookkeeper and my sister does it. It's like, I know that's very appealing, and I know they probably are trying to help you, and that seems like a good idea. Money and family, don't mix them. At some point, it will become very awkward, and you don't want to get to that point and have it ruin Thanksgiving for you because of that. So just resist the temptation to hire a friend or a family. Maybe it's one thing if they're going to help you set something up where there's not like actual results in it yet. That's okay. But I guarantee you at some point there will be a level of resentment or bitterness on one or both sides of that relationship that you do not want to deal with. Okay. So that is like the second thing I would call out there. The third thing is understand what your expectations are. So before you go out and meet with people, like, write down the 3 to 5 things that are most important when it comes that you want solved out of this hiring process. And you may think, well, I don't know what that is. That's okay. It could be something as simple as, I want to get a monthly report, or I don't read financials very well. I need the information presented to me in a different way, or I like to text. Please don't call me or email me. So, like, the reason I say it is, then when you meet with people and you kind of interview them, and it is important to interview them, you can ask them like, hey, are you okay with texting? And they may say no. And then it's like, okay, well, that doesn't work for me, because that's an important part of how this relationship needs to work for me.
Right.
That does not mean they're a bad person or a bad firm. It just means that they're not the right fit for you, right? And so all of it's about finding the right fit for you. So understanding things like, what is their communication style? How do they want to be engaged with? Does that align with what you want? That will help you find the right situation. And I guess going, like, the last thing that I would tack on all this is, if you're getting into it and it doesn't feel right to you, trust that instinct. Ask the person, like, hey, what can I do to make this better? Is there something that, like, we can fix here? Because if it doesn't feel right, don't just stick in it because it's too much work to go find another one. That will actually harm you down the road, because, again, it goes back to that aversion thing about something we don't like. If you don't like the relationship, you're also not going to talk to the person.
Yeah, no, I gotta love everybody that I'm working with, because it's too much otherwise. Okay, so I'm going to do this lightning round.
Sure.
So who is someone who is inspiring you at the moment, and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. Who is inspiring me right now at the moment? So, this is, I randomly read a book a few years ago by Oliver Berkman, and it was called 4,000 Weeks. And I loved the book. And I'm going to say that to some level, he is kind of inspiring to me, because the way he talks about things, if you've never read him, I encourage you to go check it out. He talks about our relationship with time and how that impacts our happiness and our success. And in a society and day and age where everything is about like hacking life and making things like faster in that, what he actually talks about is kind of the opposite, and the unhappiness that comes with trying to kind of game everything, if you will. And for me, as a very sort of type A, highly motivated, highly driven person who had to maximize every aspect of my life, reading sort of the way he talks about things has been really great for me to reset my own mindset, to sort of find happiness in the same thing. So it wasn't necessarily about changing what I was doing. It was more about resetting how I viewed what I was doing.
That's awesome. And what's the author's name again?
Oliver Burkeman.
Oliver Burkeman, and the name of the book?
4,000 weeks, which, just to spoil it, is that's like 80-year lifespan. So that's how many weeks we get in our life, roughly, if you're lucky.
Oh, if you're lucky. Yes. Okay. So what's the best advice you've ever received?
Okay. The best advice I ever received was from a counselor of mine who said, other people don't think about you as much as you think they do.
Of yourself.
Right. And like, that is true on a personal level and on a business level. From a like a business owner perspective, I send clients things and I get in this trap of thinking what I sent them is the most important thing to them because it's important to me. It's one of 100 emails they got, and it's about accounting. Do you really think it's the most impressing thing? Like, that's why they're not responding to you. Like, they're not thinking about you, not because they don't care. It's just they got a lot of other stuff on their mind. And so
I know.
And it also is liberating from like being a people pleaser. If you are that type of person, like, I think we sometimes think that like what we do is so impactful, or like, what is the impact I'm having on someone else? They probably don't even know that you did that. And so like we spent all this time to like perfectly craft this email, and it was read and moved on with in seconds. Yeah. And so it was very liberating, and has been very liberating to sort of like come back to that feedback.
That's awesome. So, what are you most looking forward to for this year, like the end of this, up to the end of this year, or in the next year, right?
Professionally, personally, or either?
You can either be either one.
Okay.
Or both.
I would say professionally, my firm is very much focused right now on not just providing what we think of as compliance-based bookkeeping and even advisory services, but looking at how we can help business owners essentially buy back their time when they reach a certain point where they're able to still build out legacy, and sort of what that means for them when they retire, or what it means in their personal life, without compromising on the results they want to get. Meaning that kind of taking that DIY phase and not just having them have to manage all these people in their life, but how do we take that and use it so that you don't have to worry about hiring the right wealth advisor or the right CPA or whatever it is, like taking that burden off of their life and really reducing that down. So I'm excited about what we're doing in that realm and how that's going to, like, I think, really help business owners as they progress. Personally, I looking forward to doing more traveling. My kids are at an age where like I love to take them and explore the world, because they're old enough that they appreciate it, but young enough that they don't resent being with me yet. If that makes sense.
How old are they?
They're like preteens. So they still like being there with my family as a family, but they're old enough to kind of remember and take it in. So it's really great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I probably know the answer to this, but what's your favorite tool you use in your business?
So I think any true accountant will tell you it's Excel, because that's like the default. Yeah. If that's a great, I'm going to try to.
You don't use Google Docs?
I'll say spreadsheets in general. So Excel, Google Docs, that whole sort of realm, any sort of spreadsheet, it's my medium, if you will, that I like to play in. I would say separately from that, I actually really enjoy playing around in ChatGPT. Like I don't know if you go in there's a whole bunch of different like apps that play within ChatGPT. There's like a travel GPT. There's like the image generator. Like, I find it, as someone who has trouble starting a lot of work, to be a very useful tool for getting me past that like hurdle of getting something down on paper. Although I know nothing is on paper.
You're more numbers person, so ChatGPT is good for writing things and stuff like that. So we use it a lot. Yeah. In some of our stuff as well. Yeah.
So I like it it helps me as a starting point. So from that standpoint, it's very, very effective for me to sort of get my thoughts out of my head.
Yeah, no, it's great. If I want to elaborate on something, or I can't figure out what I want to say about something particular, I'll put that in, and then it gives me some ideas, and then it's like, boom, I got it. So
what I have found to be very useful for it is thoughts come to me at very random times. And so the sequence I'll do is I'll record it onto my phone as a voice memo.
Oh, good.
I'll then transcribe it, and then I will upload it to ChatGPT and ask it to make like an action item out of it. And then I immediately have this thought into like a step-by-step plan. That has been really like helpful.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what's one piece of advice you'd give to wedding and event planners just starting out?
So this is what I would tell them is don't undervalue your skill set. And what I mean by that is there's a temptation early on to try to get any business that has a pulse. And I get that because you're just starting out and there's a fear, there's like a scarcity mindset that sets in. But what I would tell you is people can sense desperation to some extent, right? Yes. They don't consciously realize it, but when you exhibit a need to close a deal, there's a resistance on the other side. And so it's a kind of a lack of confidence. So be confident in what you provide, be confident in what you're charging, and you will actually attract not just more business, but more right business for yourself. Right. And so I think that, I know that sounds kind of like woo-wooey, if you will, but like, I do think there's a really true component to that like believe in what you're doing until the numbers tell you otherwise. And then, don't just shift because you're like, oh, I haven't closed a deal in a month. That's okay. Stay the course. If you believe in what you're offering, it will come.
I always say confidence is everything. So when I was, you get on the phone and you're presenting your proposal and you're talking about what you do. Yeah. I realized it wasn't me trying to sell them. It was just the confidence in knowing what I do and showing my expertise. Yes. Even if you fake it till you make it type of thing, which I did a lot of that when I first started the business because I didn't know how to run the business. I didn't know my systems. How do I really talk to the client? Because I did events for over 30 years, but I was in, I had a job. So for, 20 of those years, but it was once I realized it's confidence, and I used to get off the call and go, oh my God, I killed it. I killed it. Yeah. So that's what's exciting when I'm on. That's what I teach, my students is how to do that sale, right? How to just do it with, but it's the confidence. If you said it, if you are showing any kind of desperation, they're going to feel icky about that. And they're not going to think you have the confidence to run their event. So, that's a big deal. So, once you learn that piece, and it just takes time, you can teach it and, talk about it, but it does take time, practice. I've done, oh my God, thousands and thousands of proposals I presented. So, and I didn't get them all, you don't.
You're never going to bat 1,000, right? That's not.
Yeah, you don't. And even now, I'm pretty close to closing almost 100%, but there's times where they're not ready yet, or they're, I'm probably out of their budget at this point. So, but you can't back down on that unless it's something like you mentioned earlier on about maybe spending some money to get you to another level or something. Right. So if I really wanted this particular wedding, I would maybe pay for some of the travel for my team to get that wedding, because those pictures are going to get me other weddings, right?
There's an opportunity that exists within doing the work that you're willing to sort of discount it.
Right. Yes. So sometimes you might be spending the money. I spend a lot of money. I spend a lot of money. I do, but thank God I'm making it. But honestly, at the end of the year, it's all going back in the business, but that's how you grow. That's how you grow. So, but thank you so much. This has been awesome. I'm all about the finance thing. I told you, I listen to podcasts all morning when I'm working out about finance and how to invest my money. So I love it. I'm big on it. And so I'm excited to talk to you about this. So thank you so much. Such great information. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back again. We've got some events coming up in the next couple of weeks, so we won't be on for a few weeks, but it's our busy time. So if you are looking to start your own business, or you're struggling in your business, come on over to Event Planner Society. We'd love to see you there. Thank you, Nolan. I so appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Take care. Bye.